All right, I think we're live. We're ready
I
to
think we're
go.
live too. I'm so looking forward to this session with you today, Kristi.
Thanks, Jill. Me too.
So, what we are talking about today for everyone who is joining us is how to navigate layoffs. I know we are seeing a lot of layoffs happening right now in the market, and it's really hitting across a lot of different verticals. And I've had a lot of individuals come to me as an HR career coach, HR leader, and say, hey, is there anything out there that is helping people navigate this? And reached out to you, Kristi, and the team at Minority Moves Network. And I really appreciate you jumping in and saying, let's do this. Let's have a conversation for those who are seeking employment with some tips and ideas on how to navigate and take care of yourself during this process. So you ready to get started?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. So what we are going to talk about today are tips for you for post layoff to help you kind of get back on your feet and have that new opportunity. So first of all, I want to talk about personal stories from layoffs. So Kristi, have you ever yourself experienced a layoff or had family members, someone close to you go through this time?
Yeah, so I have been fortunate that I've not been laid off personally, but I've had multiple family members and close friends who have experienced this situation. And, I think what I've learned from being near them and supporting them is not only how stressful it can be from a financial standpoint and some of those logistics, but also the toll it takes on the emotional and confidence, and how it's a process of building back your trust with yourself and with employment and with job opportunities. It's something that I think a lot of us grow up thinking jobs will be a consistent presence in our life, and when that's removed, it can be really devastating and affect our identity and how we believe in ourselves. So I think that acknowledging how extensive it can be is really important.
Yeah, it's all those things. And, as an HR leader and a career transition coach for years, I've had to help others navigate through these and have conversations regarding, with individuals who are being laid off. And I've also experienced a layoff myself in my career. And, losing a job is one of the top stressors that we experience in our lifetime. And it is something that, oops, sorry about that, folks.
Somebody needs you.
Somebody
It's a career
needs
coach,
me.
though.
So, we are, we experience a lot of emotions when these things happen to us. It's grief, it's shame, there's self-doubt. These are all natural emotions that happen when we experience any type of loss, and a job is no different. So this is why when we talk about navigating through layoffs, we have to acknowledge not only that we need to start the process to actively, look for work, but the emotional side of it that feeds into our ability to really engage in that career search. So
For sure.
let's talk
And
about some
and
of
I,
the proactive tips too.
yeah, and I was just going to add too. I think it's a really isolating process, right? So much of our socializing happens during the day, with our work colleagues, and when that is removed, and then there's also the layer of shame and how do I talk to my family about this or my friends or my neighbors, you can become very isolated. And so I do think these conversations, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as we sort of talk about tips and tricks, but finding a community that you can engage with, finding supports in other people, I think is really important, and recognizing how isolating the process can be, and trying to balance that out with other networks that are different from your colleagues that you were once working with.
Oh, absolutely. I just remember the emotions myself going through, what am I going to say to people? And how do I talk about this? And how do I get past the emotions? I'd rather have just stayed home and really not talk to anyone. But I also know that that wasn't going to help me in this time where I needed to, pull myself up and start thinking about what do I need to do to get back into a career, and hopefully a career, that I can continue to love and enjoy, because that takes a hit on you too, right? There's so
Right.
many emotions that go with it.
For
So
sure.
with
For
that,
sure.
let's talk about some proactive steps to prepare for layoff. So why don't you share just a little bit from your perspective, and then I'll share a little bit, Kristi.
For sure. One of the things that we talk a lot about at M2N is about our identity and how do we define ourselves. And so much of that is about the work that we do, but trying to challenge us to think outside of just our occupation. I think we often have the habit of introducing ourselves and saying, I am Kristi and I am a teacher. I am an HR specialist. I am, whatever it is that we are, but lots of we're lots of things, right? There's lots of ways that we can identify ourselves, and I think challenging ourselves to do that. I had to do that because I stepped away from the workplace for a while to take care of my kids. That was, not the same thing, but it is hard to re-identify yourself. You don't just want to walk up and introduce yourself as Sophia's mom. I'm still a person. And so figuring out what are those things, right? I am a mother, I am a wife, I am a community leader. What are my other interests? What are the things that I enjoy doing that I can use in conversation so I don't feel so isolated? And that way, that's another way that you sort of expand your network, which is an important part of being proactive for any kind of job shift and job change, right? Um, the more you can have a network that you are reciprocating and is building and expanding organically, the more opportunities you have to reach out to people if you are faced with a layoff or a job change. And so I think that those are two things that are really important. And then the third thing I would say is knowing your own skills. What are the things that you are really good at? What are the things that you might need to get more experience doing? I remember a time for myself when I was in charge of leading all of the fundraising efforts for a small nonprofit. And our director of communications left, and there was a vacancy there. And I stepped up and said, you know what, I will oversee this role while we're looking for another person so that I can build some of those skills. It wasn't a temporary thing. I mean, it wasn't a permanent thing. I couldn't do two jobs at once for a long time, but it did allow me to build some of those skills and have some of those experiences that I was able to then translate into a future job opportunity. So some of those opportunities within a company, maybe there's some lateral moves or different aspects of your industry that you can pursue when those opportunities arise. It is a good idea to take those so that you can diversify your skills and have more options.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. I mean, great advice. And, I want to take it through kind of what I would say are a series and steps of, just quick highlights, especially on the care side before we get into a lot of strategies on the job search side.
Mm-hmm.
And you've already hit some of these, but I think one of the things, and it's sometimes easier said than done, because we all know when you lose a job, not only are you handling the emotional component of that, but there's a financial component on this that we, want to get back to work very, very quickly and need to get back to work because we all have expenses and we all have bills to pay, right? But I do think it's important that you try to carve out some time to take a break, even if it's a short one. You need a moment to decompress because you've gone through a lot. Maybe you've been working nonstop for a period of time too, and you want to go into a job search and, your new career opportunity re-energized and rejuvenated. So even if it's just, a few days, take that break and give yourself that time.
Mm-hmm.
You're also going to do during that time, you're going to mourn that loss of your job, and it's natural. And even if you really didn't love your job, you're still going to mourn it. Or you really loved your job and the people that you worked with, and you're going to mourn it. Let yourself have that time to mourn and understand that it's okay.
I mean, sometimes I think you mourn a job you don't like even more because it's like, oh my gosh, I spent all this time doing something I didn't even love. And now this, like, I thought I was doing the right thing. And I was, playing the game, and I was, putting my college education to use. I mean, all these messages that we sort of tell ourselves internally. Sometimes I think it's even harder when it's a job we didn't like, because then there's the regret on top of the shame and disappointment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so when you're going through all of this and you're going to have those high and low moments, you've got to start, if you don't already do it, a gratitude practice. And that's just so when the things get really tough, and you'll have those tough days, you can reflect back on the things that give you gratitude, even in those, some people spend a lot of time on gratitude. I always say, just spend 5 minutes in the morning as you start your day, as you get ready to start your search. You talk about some things that you've got gratitude and grateful for. Very, very important when you go through this. Another thing I think is, don't be afraid to seek help. I mean, again, this is a time of grief, a time of mourning. So reach out if you've got a therapist, or you need to, or feel you want to talk to a therapist or a coach or a mentor, a trusted advisor, or someone at your church. Don't be afraid. You don't have to go through this alone. There are so many people who can help you navigate through this time. And that's what we're going to talk about, is you're actually better if you don't search alone during this process.
And I do think employing is the wrong word in terms of not paying that, but inviting people into your search and your process that don't have a personal stake in it is important, right? Everyone is affected by a layoff. Your spouse, your children, your parents, whoever is sort of invested in the future of your life has an interest in it, right? And they have their own emotions. So hopefully you can find a lot of support within your own immediate family and your friends, but having somebody that can guide you without their own emotional attachments, I think is important. Because it doesn't just affect the person who loses their job. It often affects the whole family and a lot of the relationships around them as well.
Absolutely. And I know we are about halfway into our conversation, so I'll go through a couple more of these that I think are kind of that pre-search. And that is one, seek that government services that are available to you as part of a layoff. The first and foremost is the unemployment benefits, and making that application. It does take a few weeks to get through the process and get those benefits started and flowing. So the sooner you dive into it, the sooner that clock will start ticking so you can access those. I think setting up a regular routine around exercise, or even getting out in the community and volunteering helps keep you busy during this time period. Keeps you mentally and physically at your peak during this time period. And you never know, in those times that you're in the gym, or you're exercising with people, or you're volunteering, it may lead you to networks for job opportunities. You just never know. So always keep your eyes and ears open there. You talked about this a little bit too, is list out who your true business friends are. And when I say true business friends, those are those advocates who've helped you lean into your career, and that you feel really good will give you advice, feedback, and help you through this process. We all know who those are. We have a lot of colleagues, we have a lot of peers, but you know who your true business friends are.
And I think finding those, another way to define them is people who align with you in terms of the type of work they would like to do, the things that they're interested in, because they can sort of help guide you. And you can, if they make an introduction, you can have some trust that is an introduction to an individual, a company that aligns with the kind of work that you would like to do, the kind of environment you'd like to be a part of. And so, thinking about it from that perspective, who really is looking out for what you want, not just, oh, here's a connection, but rather what is best suited for you, the job seeker.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then as you get into and prepare for your search, know that searching for your next opportunity is your new job. So you have to treat it like one. You have to set up regular, office hours, a regular routine, and a plan. So, you are really focused on the job at hand. And that's critical. I think sometimes if we don't put those things in place, we get disorganized, or we don't structure our day to get the best, use of our time to seek that new job opportunity. Because,
Right.
when a good job is out there, you have to move fairly quick and you have to be ready for it.
Right. Exactly.
Yep.
And that is actually one thing it kind of goes into this about being ready for it. One thing that I have been really disciplined about doing, and I'm really grateful for it because I've needed it, is every time I leave a role, I immediately update my resume
Yes.
while I still have that role fresh in my head. What were the skills? What were the things that I accomplished? This sort of happened to me when I came back into the workforce. It was 10 years, and somebody called and I was ready to go back, and somebody called and said, "Do you want to interview this morning?" That is what they said. "Do you want to interview this morning?" And so I had to pull up my resume, dig out my old blazer, and be ready that morning for that interview. I was really grateful when I went and looked and saw that I had updated my resume before I had left my last role. And so just being disciplined about that, so you are ready that day when you get that call, you're ready to act and feel confident that you can do so.
Absolutely. Keeping that resume fresh is critical. Also, keeping your network fresh, and we'll talk about that, is really, really critical, because when these times come, they're often unexpected, and we want to be able to move very quickly to, action. There are also a lot of great, and we'll talk about this at the end, but research what free services are out there, or tools. There are a lot of organizations too that, when you go through a layoff, may offer you paid for outplacement services that are paid for by the employer. If you are offered these services, 100% use them. These are experts who can look at your resume, look at your LinkedIn, help you put your strategy in place, help you think through some of the must-haves, like loaves, as you search for that perfect career fit. And they are free, no charge to you for those coaching sessions. So use those. Another thing we're going to talk about a little bit is beware of rebound jobs. That I know so many people who have gone through a layoff who've just taken the first job because they feel they need that income, or they need the first opportunity that comes just to get that decompression of, oh, I've got a job. But then 3-6 months later, they're back on the market because maybe they didn't take the right job that was the right fit, or they didn't do enough due diligence on the company to make sure it was a good fit for them. And they're back out in the job search. So we want to set ourselves up for success for hopefully the long term.
Absolutely. Because often, unfortunately, that rebound job can be another sign to future employers that maybe, you aren't the person that they would like to interview. You're not the person that they would want to hire. I don't want to get into all of the biases involved in people having breaks in their work history, but it is a reality. And so to try to avoid that by being really intentional about what you're looking for and the kind of company that you're looking to be a part of is really important. Obviously, we do take jobs out of circumstance at times, and sometimes that's what we have to do. But avoiding that as much as possible and just being really intentional about those choices, I think is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about some of the meat of the job search. Anything you can think of off the top when you've looked for work, or some experiences you've had?
Yeah. So, I mean, I do think the resume piece is important, and understanding how to communicate your skills and what it is that you can offer a company is very important. I think often cover letters are sort of optional at this point. I mean, that when I was in college, that was the most important thing that you had to learn to write. Now it seems like it's kind of going to the wayside, but I think a personal statement of why you are the right fit for this job, really connecting yourself, your skills, what your vision is for your career with this particular job, this particular company is important. You have to have a way to differentiate yourself. Often just listing your skills or your experiences is not going to be the case. So, what is it about this job that you can do to make a difference for this company? So, I would say that. And then I really think going back to the networking piece is important. I mean, human connections are, one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves, for our own well-being, for our own mental health. But also that is how many people find new opportunities. And so having that reciprocal organic network, and being able to extend, a call and say, I need some help now is important. And using those connections and that network that you've built over your career is important. And, then I would say once you're back on your feet and you have that job, doing the same for others. And that's how your network really grows. And that is how, when you need it, it's there for you. And then when someone calls on you, that you're there for them. And that's a really important way that we can contribute back and forth to one another.
You've hit the nail on the head. Is you get from your network what you give to your network. So, oftentimes we all know the people who only reach out when they do need something, or they've lost a job. And I'm always willing to help those people, but I might likely go to the extra effort for someone who is really actively engaged with me in the past and kept in touch, and has been there when I've needed, something from a support standpoint as well. So it's really important when you reach out to your network that you give as much as you receive, and you keep those active. So, when we think about the search itself, I'm going to go through just very quickly some tips for everyone, right? There are hours we could spend on this, and this alone. But the first part is I want you to do some self-reflection and, assessments. So first of all, if you have taken any assessments, revisit them or consider taking some assessments, things like Strength Finders, DISC, Predictive Index, Enneagram. If you've taken them, or there are places where you can take those fairly inexpensively online, and there's even some free options, get to know yourself or revisit what those things have said about you. I think also you want to make a list of what I call the love-loathe list. What did you really enjoy about your past work? And what did you loathe? So when you're looking at opportunities, hopefully you're going to find the match of the things that you really love. You also want to think about what are your nice to haves in your must haves. So maybe a must have is I need to be remote. Or maybe working remote is a nice to have, or maybe, whatever your circumstances, know what you must have versus what you'd like to have. Think through about what your career goals too. Where do you want to be now, and where do you want to be in the future? And to pull some of this together, I suggest going on what is known as a listening tour. Talk to ex-coworkers, bosses, direct reports about you. Learn about you, your strengths, your opportunities. Ask them how they would go about a search if they were you and in your shoes. Ask them for their recommendations, their connections. And remember, when they give to you that all-important thank you for providing the information, and really give them permission to be honest to you, because you don't just want to hear the good things about you. You want to hear about the opportunity areas that you have that you can work on to be successful in the next job and be successful in the interview process. So that's kind of the part one, that self-reflection and assessment. Make sense?
Yeah. And I think your advice about the listening tour is right on. I mean, for myself, I can just say specifically, there have been numerous job opportunities that I didn't even consider for myself until I was with a former colleague who said, have you thought about this? And I, thought, oh no, that's not a good fit for me. And then they listed all the reasons why they thought it would be a good fit for me. So learning to hear others' feedback, positive and negative, or constructive, I should say, is really important. And I do think you'll learn things about yourself that maybe you haven't seen or didn't recognize, because it is often difficult to observe ourselves and listen to ourselves, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. So once you've done that, then you can really decide, where am I, when you talk about that summary statement, where am I the best fit? So that may be, I am really want to find a VP of marketing role in a mid-sized company that's privately held and in tech, that's past Series A. So again, you start to narrow down what am I really, really good at, and go for those opportunities first. And we also build our resume to fit those opportunities, to make sure it speaks to those things. So we want a visually attractive resume. We've all seen the resumes where people cram so much in to it that it's hard to read. So we want them visually attractive. We want them simple formats and readable. We want them segmented, whether you're using a chronological or a functional, segment it based on your, contact information, your elevator pitch and summary of who you are, those experiences, those education, training, or military service. And then don't forget to add community and volunteering. Employers love to see what you're doing out in the community and that you're active. You also want to, when you find that ideal opportunity for you, make sure that resume is tailored to that job. So look at that job description, look at your resume, and look to line it up as best that you can with your experiences. So I do recommend, there's some work involved, that instead of just throwing your resume out at 100 jobs, get really targeted. You'll have better luck if you're targeted and speak to what the employer is looking for.
Absolutely. And I think too, if there are skills that the job is looking for that maybe you don't have directly in your previous employment, that's a great time to also include community service, right? I didn't do this in my job, but as a leader at my church, I've planned 3 or 4 events. And so I think I can, I have the skills in order to do the event planning part of this role, or whatever it may be. I think that's where you can be very direct about, I have this transferable skill. I can, transfer the skills of being a waitress when I was in college to doing customer service in this role that I'm applying for, and just being very explicit about how you can add value to that role in those ways, even if it's not from your previous job.
Right. Even if you were taking a caregiving break, put that on there, and how that, the things that you did, maybe you were organizing, a situation for a family member, or helping them navigate through something. Those can be valuable things that you want to share. Think about your resume too. We don't want to be more than a couple pages. We want to make sure that the first page is really the most valuable real estate, that it's really clean, it's really readable, and it really focuses on not only what you've done, like in using those great action verbs, but that it gives an example of what outcome was achieved by the work that you done. What did you save the company, or what did, happen great with customers? Make sure you get to those outcomes. That's what they want to see. And then we want to match up whatever's on our resume on our LinkedIn. We don't want those two things to be disconnected.
For sure. One thing I would say about LinkedIn that I've used as a strategy is find someone on LinkedIn whose career you would like to emulate or follow. What does their LinkedIn look like? What are some of the things that they have posted? What are the things that they're following? Use that as a guide for yourself, especially if you haven't been active on LinkedIn in the past. And LinkedIn is a very valuable tool. People are looking there, and having an updated LinkedIn profile is very important through this process.
Absolutely. That's a great tip, right? We don't have to, we don't have to do these things alone and by ourselves in a vacuum. We've already talked a little bit about networking, so I won't spend a lot of time there. All I can say is be strategic about your networking. Network in the areas that are going to bring value to your job search, because you can spend a lot of time in networking, but if it's not really targeted to what you're trying to accomplish, it's not going to yield the result that you want. So just keep that in mind, on top of all the other things that we've already talked about. Also, when you start applying for jobs, there's LinkedIn, and there's Indeed, and there's, the common job boards, but there are also job boards that are specific to different industries. There are job boards that are specific to different types of careers. So for an example, industry, in the tech industry here in Indianapolis, TechPoint has a wonderful job board with a lot of tech-enabled companies putting tech jobs out there. If you're in sales, there's, salesjobs.com. There are also organizations, like if you're in HR, we have the SHRM organization, or if you're in engineering, there's organizations there. They have job boards. So look at some of those organizations too. Alumni, if you're an alumni of a university, they often have job boards as well. Not to mention company career pages. If there's companies you want to work for, go to their career pages and see what jobs are posted out there. Do your research.
Great.
Absolutely. And then, when you do get the interviews, really be prepared, research that company, have questions that you want to ask that show you're interested in the opportunity. Close it by expressing your interest in the opportunity and next steps. And always, if you have contact information of the person or the recruiter or the hiring manager, send a thank you. A simple email, quick line or two, thanking them for the time and your continued interest in the opportunity is all you need.
Absolutely. I will tell you, one of the best thank you gifts that my husband ever received from somebody he interviewed was she sent a pizza to the office and removed one slice and said, "I am your missing slice." She did get the job. And I will forever remember that is just the most perfect way to say thank you. And they didn't forget her, that's for sure.
Very, very creative. Well, I know we're running close on time. So, I do want to talk about resources that are out there for you. Kristi, I think there's a couple maybe that you and I talked about that you wanted to share. So if you want to go through those, and then I'll close it with a few additional from my end.
Yeah. So Jill, of course, is the expert on I would say traditional resources. And, my focus is really on, what is your well-being? How do you support yourself through this process? So a couple of things that I really enjoy and have become a big fan of is 2 podcasts. So if you're out walking and doing your exercise, as Jill has suggested, 2 that I recommend, The Full Reset is a podcast that's hosted by Austin Channing Brown and 3 of her good friends. It's women from all different stages in their lives, and they talk about things that they would do over. And I think it's a great discussion. It's a very honest, open, vulnerable discussion, but it is giving you permission to think about, all right, this could be an opportunity for me to pursue something different, to take a different path, to make a different turn. It doesn't have to be, just continue down this linear path. Maybe it's the opportunity you've been waiting for, but have been a little bit too afraid to think about it. So I love that podcast. And the other one that I think is just great fun, but along the same vein, is called the Quitters Podcast. And Chad Sanders and Julie Brown are the hosts. And they talk to celebrities and regular people about things that they've quit to improve their lives. And again, I think it's an opportunity to take a moment to reflect on, what is it that I want? Where do I want to go from here? And really take that moment so that you're intentional about that next step and feel good about where you're going and where that path is taking you.
That's great. I love podcasts. I love it. And they're so easy to listen to in the car, you're on that walk or that run. Here's a couple more. Is one I'm going to share with you. I don't know if y'all can see. This is a book. It's by a friend and mentor of mine. It just was released about actually a couple months ago. And it's called Never Search Alone by Phil Terry. It is a fabulous read. It's an easy read, and it's full of free tools for the job seeker. And it really talks about a lot of the concepts that we've talked about today, and that you don't need to do this in a vacuum. In fact, you can join free job search councils through his experience. And again, learn more about this. Phil Terry, Never Search Alone. You can Google it.
Fantastic.
And buy the book. A couple other things are Indiana Career Connect Work One. So part of what's available through the Department of Workforce Development. There's careeronestop.org, which can give you access to different careers, different assessments you can take to see what kind of career match it best for you. There is online, it's called ONET, has great labor market information, job information. There's the Indiana Career Ready. There's Indiana Career Explorer, again, it talks about careers that you might be looking for or interests if you want to change careers. There's Indiana Next Jobs, where jobs can be posted, and it talks about, some different places that you can go. And then there's a great organization here locally in Indianapolis called Passport for Employment. And it is basically a free outplacement service provider. And their website is golove.org. So those are just a couple I would recommend that are available to you. Online resources, free resources, low-cost resources to help you in your job search.
Those are fantastic, Jill. You're such a wealth of knowledge in that regard. So I'm really glad that we're able to share those. And we'll put some of them in the comments once it is posted so people can, just link to those directly, which would be great.
Yeah. So anything we can do to help. And hopefully this is out there in the LinkedIn land that people can engage with, re-engage with, and gets them hopefully a leap into their career search and the emotional component that goes with it. So I appreciate everyone's time today and appreciate you joining me today, Kristi.
My pleasure. And I would say, as we do post this, if people have questions or are looking for additional resources, put them in the comments. Jill and I both will be checking it. We are more than happy to respond online, offline. That's part of the reason why we did this, is to, be part of the conversation and to build our own little community here so people aren't feeling so alone. So the conversation doesn't have to stop right here. We can continue it along the way as people are going through their journey.
Absolutely. Just if you stay focused and you have a good attitude around it and you recognize the work ahead of you, I know you'll be successful, and we're here to cheer you on and be a resource. So good luck, everyone. And you've got this. Your next really exciting opportunity awaits for you. So
for sure. Thank you, Jill. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks. All right. Have a good one, everyone.